They say royalty carries more than just power in its blood. It carries ancient pacts, long-forgotten curses, and the silent screams of those buried beneath palaces. In a secluded kingdom shrouded by jungle and time, a princess born under a blood moon dares to question the spirits that rule her bloodline. What she uncovers should have stayed buried. Let me take you deep into the heart of the forgotten empire of Nyama, where spirits whisper through the leaves, and the past is never truly dead. The kingdom of Nyama had always been a realm of beauty and silence. Hidden from modern eyes, its jungles throbbed with life, and its palaces shimmered in obsidian and gold. But no matter how opulent the throne room or how soothing the lullabies of the wind, an unspoken dread hung heavy over its royal bloodline. Princess Adisa was born during the rarest celestial event, the Crimson Eclipse. Elders murmured that such births marked a severing of fate, a soul split in two. Her father, King Jafari, refused to entertain superstition. He raised Adisa like the future monarch she was meant to be, intelligent, headstrong, and fearless. But Adisa grew up hearing things no one else seemed to hear. The ancestral crypt beneath the palace grounds was sealed off, forbidden to all but the king and the high priest. Yet when the wind rustled through the great baobab trees, Adisa would hear her name whispered from deep underground. Adisa. At first, she dismissed it as imagination. But the dreams began, vivid, bloody, and terrifying. She wandered dark tunnels by torchlight. She stood ankle-deep in cold water as ancient bones snapped underfoot. She always woke with a gasp, soaked in sweat, sometimes with dirt under her fingernails. One evening, while the royal court celebrated the harvest moon, Adisa slipped away from the banquet. Her silk slippers made no sound on the marble floors as she descended the shadowy corridors toward the crypt entrance. The door was carved with ancient glyphs, some glowing faintly with a reddish hue. They pulsed when she touched them, and the heavy stone barrier opened with a groan that echoed like thunder. The air inside was cold and wet, like a tomb submerged in forgotten sorrow. Rows of ancestral statues lined the crypt walls, their faces chipped but unmistakably regal. Each one wore the Nyaman crown, and each stared down at her with hollow, judging eyes. She descended further until she reached a chamber with a massive stone basin at its center. Dried blood coated the rim, and bone fragments filled its base. On the walls were inscriptions she could barely translate. "The pact shall not be broken. The blood must remember." A sudden gust extinguished her torch. In complete darkness, she heard the whisper again, closer this time. "You wear the crown of defiance. The spirits will not forgive." She fled. 4 days afterward, the princess said nothing. But a change had begun. Shadows lingered longer in her room. Her reflection in mirrors would delay ever so slightly before mimicking her movements. When she laughed, a second, distorted echo would sometimes follow. It was the old priestess, Mbuya, who first noticed. "You have entered what should not be touched, my princess," she whispered, one morning as she braided Adisa's hair. "The ancestors are not kind to those who disturb their slumber." Adisa snapped back. "Then perhaps they should not have whispered to me first." Mbuya's eyes widened. "They chose you because you are weak." "No," Adisa said coldly. "They chose me because I am not afraid." The days grew colder, though the season had not changed. Fruit rotted on the vine before it could be harvested. Cattle birthed stillborn calves. And every morning, crows gathered atop the palace spires in unnatural numbers, staring down in silent congress. Rumors spread through the kingdom. The princess had been cursed, that she was no longer fully human. But King Jafari, weary and ill, dismissed the court's concerns with trembling hands. That's when the statue in the Hall of Queens began to bleed. It was a sculpture of Queen Eniola, Adisa's grandmother, known for her cruel rule and mysterious death. One morning, the guards found blood oozing from the statue's eyes and mouth, staining the marble floor. Adisa arrived before the statue was covered. She touched the blood with her finger. It was warm. "She's warning me," she whispered. That night, she returned to the crypt, this time carrying candles and a ceremonial dagger. The whispers grew clearer now. They spoke of betrayal. Of Adisa's bloodline abandoning an ancient promise to the forest spirits in exchange for power and conquest. Her ancestors had vowed to offer a royal soul every 4 generations to maintain peace with the spirit realm. Adisa was the 4th. She wasn't supposed to live past her 16th birthday. But her mother had hidden her away during the offering season. The priests had declared the pact broken, but the king chose to suppress the truth and declared it myth. The spirits, bound by ritual and silence, had waited. But now that Adisa had entered the crypt, the bloodline was exposed. She knelt before the bone basin, now wet again with fresh blood that hadn't been there before. "I will not die for the sins of those who ruled before me," she declared. "If the pact is broken, let it stay broken." The chamber trembled. Statues cracked. Something ancient shifted beneath the stone. "Then you shall be hunted." By the next morning, the palace was in chaos. 3 servants had gone missing. A guard was found hanging upside down from the baobab tree, eyes plucked clean, bones arranged in the symbol of the crimson eclipse. Adisa knew then, the spirits had been patient, but not forgiving. She could feel them now. Not just in the crypt, but in the corners of every hallway, behind the tapestries, beneath her bed. And in the mirror, something else looked back. Her own face, but with coal-black eyes and a jagged grin that moved a second before she did. Adisa had defied the spirits. Now the entire kingdom would pay. What happens when you defy the dead? Princess Adisa has rejected the ancient pact that kept her kingdom safe for generations. But the spirits of the forgotten are stirring. Whispers now walk in flesh, shadows drink the light, and the royal bloodline trembles beneath the weight of centuries of broken oaths. This is no longer just about survival. It's about undoing a curse soaked in generations of royal betrayal. The kingdom of Nyama had not seen rain in over 3 weeks. The once vibrant land began to shrivel beneath an oppressive sun that didn't move. Daylight felt too long, as if the sky itself had forgotten how to blink. Nights were worse, eerily silent, except for the low groaning of wood beams and windless whispers that curled through cracks in the palace walls. Adisa stopped sleeping. Her chamber, once a sanctuary of polished gold and perfumed silks, had become a cage. The mirror across from her bed was now shrouded with thick cloth. She couldn't bear to look into it anymore. She feared she'd see it again. That version of herself. The one with black, pupilless eyes. The one that smiled too wide, whose lips whispered when hers were still. It would mouth things she couldn't hear, until one night it spoke in sync with her voice. "You are mine now." King Jafari, once a man of booming authority, had grown ghostly thin. He sat in silence most days, staring at a ceremonial mask carved from ironwood, the very mask worn by the high priest during the sacrifice ceremony that had not happened in 16 years. "I defied them for you," he croaked one day when Adisa came to visit. "I couldn't let them take you. You were all I had left." "But you didn't stop them," Adisa replied coldly. "You only delayed the wrath." She no longer blamed him. She blamed them, the faceless ancestors who had bartered their bloodline to ancient spirits in exchange for glory. The ones who ruled through fear, whose crowns were won with pacts written in blood. But the pact was real. And it was due. That night, a scream ripped through the palace. The guards found one of the royal advisors, Elder Kofi, lying in the reflecting pool, eyes wide open, throat slit clean as though by a blade of wind. At the edge of the pool, drawn in thick, wet crimson, was the mark again. A red eclipse. The same symbol Adisa saw in the crypt. The spirits were no longer whispering. They were hunting. Adisa summoned the only person she thought might still know how to fight them, Mbuya, the priestess who'd once braided her hair and warned her of the crypt. They met in the ancestral garden under a black sky heavy with unfallen rain. "You must finish what your father interrupted," Mbuya said. "You must descend into the earth root." The earth root was a legend. A hidden network of tunnels beneath the crypt that led to the Njuzu tree, the mythical heart of the Nyama pact. It was said that at the center of the earth root, the spirits of the pact took form, neither dead nor alive, sustained by the broken promises of royal blood. "If I go down there, will they take me?" Adisa asked. "If they don't, they'll take the rest of the kingdom instead." That night, with a torch and a blade forged from ancestral ore, Adisa returned to the crypt. This time, she knew where to look. Behind the largest statue, past a narrow slit in the stone, she found the path. The scent was foul, wet soil, old decay, and something else, burnt memory. She walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the earth, following the tunnels as they began to breathe around her. Literally, the walls seemed to expand and contract like lungs. Roots twisted along the ceiling, some dripping dark sap, others pulsing like veins. Finally, she reached the earthroot. A vast cavern opened before her, lit by a red glow pulsing from the twisted roots of a massive upside-down tree. Its trunk spiraled into the earth like a claw. At its center, a pool of black liquid shimmered with flickering faces, royal ancestors screaming silently beneath the surface. This was the heart of the pact. A figure stepped from behind the tree. It looked like her, and yet not. Eyes like pits, a face half veiled in shadow, lips curled in bitterness and grief. "I am what you buried," it said in her voice. "The price you refused to pay." Adisa stood tall, though her heart thudded painfully in her chest. "I was a child. I didn't choose this. But you carry their blood. And now it must be bled." The spirit lunged. The torch extinguished. She fought in darkness. She slashed and stumbled, felt her blade strike bark, flesh, and mist. Voices surrounded her, cries of queens and kings past, children lost, betrayed spirits demanding justice. Adisa dropped the blade and reached for the ancestral amulet around her neck, a gift from her mother, given on her 16th birthday. She hadn't worn it since the dreams began. She slammed it to the earth. A shockwave pulsed through the chamber. The earthroot screamed. Light exploded from the amulet, blinding red and white. The tree cracked, its roots flailing like dying serpents. The pool began to boil, faces distorting and vanishing. The spirit screamed, Adisa's face melting into hundreds of others, until it collapsed into a pile of dust. Then, silence. When Adisa emerged from the crypt, morning had returned. Real morning. Rain fell for the first time in nearly a month, soft and warm, cleansing the palace of its unseen decay. The crows were gone. The mirrors no longer whispered. And the statue of Queen Eniola in the Hall of Queens had crumbled, revealing within it a hollow cavity where bones had once been hidden. Adisa summoned the royal court and made a declaration. "The blood pact is over. Our kingdom will no longer pay for the sins of the dead. We will honor them, but we will not fear them." There was no celebration, only solemn nods, and the sound of distant thunder as the last of the cursed clouds fled across the horizon. Yet Adisa knew better than to believe in perfect peace. Late that night, as she passed the mirror once more, she glanced. Her reflection stared back in sync. Except, just before she walked away, it smiled. A second too late. For the first time in weeks. True, complete silence.